Hello there. Thank you for taking a moment to watch this video. And on this specific training, we're going to continue talking about our Salesforce integration and setup. And more specifically, we're talking about dialing from the contacts object. You see, once you install the PhoneBurner app, you can now start launching dial sessions from just about any object within your Salesforce org. And one of the most common objects to use is the contacts object. And of course, if you've been following along, you've seen how to add the option to launch a dial session from the contacts object from any list view. And we've also talked about these 3 custom fields that are added to your account automatically once you install the PhoneBurner app. But how do you take advantage of them, right? PhoneBurner is going to be automatically updating those after each call, but how do you take advantage of these fields? The best way to take advantage of these is with your list view. So here you can see I've got a list view called PhoneBurner Training. I'm going to go ahead and clone this one. Let's call this PhoneBurner Training Call 1. And we're going to go ahead and save it. Now right now, everything about this list is exactly like the other one, but we're going to add a couple other filters to make this list view just a little bit different and to help us create a nice streamlined process that we can follow to make sure that we're prospecting properly. So we're going to go ahead and click on Add Filter. And the first thing I'm looking at is my number of attempted calls. I'm looking for anything that equals blank or 0. So I'm going to start with blank. So I'm going to click Add. And then I'm going to add another filter. Equals 0. Done. And let's go ahead and save that. Let's see what that gives us right now. Uh-oh, where did our contacts go? We don't want that. We need to see all of those contacts in order to call them. We only want them to leave a list when we've actually made the call. And here's the problem. We did attempted calls as blank and attempted calls as 0, and somebody can't have both of those values. So we need to add some filter logic. So I'm going to click on Add Filter Logic. And you see here where it says 1 and 2 and 3. We definitely don't want 2 and 3 because somebody can't have both of those. We're going to change this to or. Now let's go ahead and save that and see what happens. Uh-oh, that's not going to work either. And the reason why is we need to put some parentheses around this. Now let's try saving that again. And there we go. We now have a list that's a little bit more dynamic. It's going to show us all of our contacts that have either a blank value in attempted calls or 0. Now, once we start calling through this list, these contacts are going to start to drop from this list. And so what you should start doing is thinking through exactly what kind of process you want your contacts to follow in order to efficiently and effectively prospect them. So this would be our first phone call. You're not going to connect with every prospect by making just one phone call. So you might want to create a series of list views that take all of your prospects through a specific calling process or flow. So let's go ahead and clone this one. We're going to rename it. Let's call this one Call 2. And we're going to save it. Now, of course, we're not looking for a blank number of attempted calls or 0 calls. So we're actually going to change this one from number attempted calls equals blank to 1. We're also going to get rid of 0 because we're not looking for people with 0 attempted calls as well. So we're going to delete that. And we're going to add another filter. Let's take a look at our last attempted date. Let's change the operator from equals to not equal to, and the value to today. So we're looking for anybody who's been called one time, and the last time we called them was not today. So it's going to be 1 and 2 and 3. Let's go ahead and save that. And of course, this list view now is going to be empty because we don't have any contacts that fit that criteria. Now let's jump in and do a quick dial session. Let's go back to our call number 1. Let's select a couple records and begin our PhoneBurner session. Okay, so let's just make a couple phone calls here. Let's say we call Andrew Sample and we leave a voicemail. And we're going to call George Sample and we're going to say he answers the phone and we set an appointment with George. So those are our 2 test calls that we did. Let's go ahead and hit done. Let's go back to our list view. And when we go back to that list view, what we'll notice is that Andrew and George, I believe those were their names, are no longer listed here. Why are they no longer listed here? Because they no longer qualify. Remember, if we go back to our list view filters, we're looking for contacts that have a blank number of attempted calls or a 0 for a number of attempted calls. And since they don't fit either one of those, they are out of here. They no longer qualify. What this allows us to do is to create dynamic list views so that we can systematically work through our prospects so that everybody gets prospected the right way. Let's jump over to our call number 2. And what you'll notice is they don't show up here either. Why do they not show up here? Because last attempt does not equal today. Let's go ahead and update this real quick. Let's change this to equals today. And we're going to go ahead and save that. And now you're going to see Andrew and George on our list. Why? Because they were called today. Now, depending on how you want to work through your list, you may or may not want to include somebody who is called today, right? A lot of times we want to make sure people are not called multiple times in a single day. It all just depends on the list and how those contacts ended up on your list. Right? So if somebody requested information today to be contacted, you might want to call them multiple times today. However, before we wrap up this training, I do want to point out one other thing. Remember when we called Andrew and George, we marked one of them as voicemail and one of them as set appointment. If I call George and set an appointment today, I probably don't want to call him again today to try to schedule an appointment. Which means I may want to filter George out. There's a lot of different ways that you could potentially filter George out of your list. I'm just going to give you one example here. So let's go ahead and add another filter. And the field that we're going to look at is our last disposition. We're going to look for call outcomes that is not equal to set appointment. And done. And let's go ahead and save it. Oh. Don't forget our logic. Let's go ahead and save that. So we are looking for contacts that have been called once, they've been called today, and their last disposition does not equal set appointment. Now, of course, there's a lot of different things for you to consider when you're trying to put together a list view. And some of the most common options is to use the contact status. So you could create a flow in Salesforce so that anytime a contact has a last disposition of set appointment, their contact status changes to something else. So that way you don't have to take into account every disposition. You just take into account the current status of a contact, along with total number of attempted calls, last attempt date, and anything else. So anyway, that's a quick little overview of building lists in Salesforce to help you systematically work through your contact calling list. I hope this helps you and your team get more done using the power of PhoneBurner. Thanks again, and happy dialing.